Okay, if I was to give one tip, if I had to give only one tip for you to get faster in the marathon, what would that be? Undoubtedly, and it's a cheat answer really, but undoubtedly it would be nutrition. Most people fall down on nutrition because they just underestimate how important it is to fuel your body before, during the training, before the race, and during the race. They underestimate it, and I'll tell you why. I guess it's because most people think that running is all about running, and you get faster at running, and gradually you get faster at running, and you'll get better at endurance, you'll get better with your stamina, and therefore you'll be able to go further and faster. That simple. Unfortunately, it comes down to your glycogen supplies in your body, and your muscles and your liver have only got so much energy for your body to run over the ground, especially at the level, at the pace, at the effort level that you want your body to go at during the marathon. So if you run out of that glycogen in the muscles, in the liver, you've probably felt it. You've probably felt it at some point, and that's called hitting the wall. That's called bonking, whatever you want to call it. It's not a myth. It actually happens, but it's not a physical wall. It's you running out of glycogen because you've not timed or you've not fueled correctly in order to give your body what it needs in order to finish that race, in order to finish that marathon. And if you've run ultra marathons and you've not got this right, then you can bonk multiple times, because eventually, if you run out of glycogen, it takes time in order to put the right fuels back in. It's got to be the right fuels you've got to put back in, and then you've got to go again, and then you could bonk again if you run out of fuel again. But an easy way to get that right is just, you only need to get it right once, and then once you've run a marathon and not even had to think about fueling for the entire race, for the entire distance, it will never, you'll realize that you've got your fueling strategy right, and you will never have to think about this again. And the way that you do that is throughout the training, and this is where the cheat answer comes in really, because there's much more just than fueling to get a marathon right, but the cheat answer comes in by throughout the training, and I've said multiple times, you need to get fit, and then you need a dedicated 10 weeks where you'll dedicate that to specific marathon training for you, for your paces, and then 10 to 14 days taper where you'll ease off the volume, run less kilometers, less miles, but you'll keep the intensity the same. And throughout that period where you're getting fit, so that looks a bit like, for me, it looks a bit like a skeleton project of what I'm about to do in my 10 weeks intense. And the purpose of getting fit is so that those first weeks of the intense or the intensive 10 weeks are not a shock to the body. Within that training period, within that getting fit period, and within the 10 weeks, it's about training the stomach to take in the amount of carbohydrates that you need, as well as training the body during the interval session, during the long run. It's about training the stomach as much as training the legs, as much as training the heart and the lungs, and it's equally as important, especially if you're running a marathon, especially if you're training for an ultra marathon. And the way that you do that is very, very simple. You look at what your current fueling strategy is. Now, most people's, and I will hold my hand up, most people's, including mine, was literally look at the back of a gel packet, realize that, think that the only strategy that you've got is the amount of gels that you're carrying in your pockets or in your belt that you kind of can run with on race day. Look at the back of a gel. A gel will usually tell you it's got 100 calories, 25 grams of carbohydrate, some potassium, some magnesium, some sodium, which will help you with muscle cramps, some energy, etc. And then it'll tell you, eat one of these every 40 minutes. And that means that 1.5 gels per hour will usually give you just under 40 grams of carbohydrate, 37.5 grams of carbohydrate, and then 150 calories per hour. When you look into it, and when you look into where the science is now, and we're still quite new on this, but you can take at least double that, if not a bit more. And the top athletes are taking 90 or 80 to 100 grams of carbohydrates per hour, and then you can do the maths on the calories. So you can take double the amount that you're probably taking right now. If you're anything like me, and what you will see from that is three things. That throughout the training, you're going to be well fueled throughout the training. You're going to be well fueled throughout the training session, but you're going to recover quicker because there's not going to be as much muscle breakdown because the muscles have been fed throughout the session and they've not had to go through that muscle breakdown because you've not been eating the muscles, you've not been eating away at the glycogen and then needed to move on to something else during the session. And for the long run, you've got the stomach used to getting the carbohydrates in, but not just getting them in, so they're sloshing around in your stomach. You've got the body used to taking the carbohydrate in, taking the sports drink or the energy gel in, and then utilizing it in the form of energy for the muscles. And that's the most important part. It's not just about putting the sports drink in. And this is why it's kind of crazy when I get the text like, I'm just at the expo, races tomorrow, the races on Sunday, what should I be, what gels should I pick up and how many should I have? Like, it's far too late. Like, you've got to be training with exactly the fuel plan that you're going to use in the race. And that's really, it's equally as important as doing the training because that's what's going to get you through the last 10 miles. And if you think about a marathon, it's like 26 miles. Getting 16 miles is usually quite comfortable for people because it's usually not that long in terms of time. That last part, when you're fatigued, when you're kind of like, you're not running in the same style, that's when you really need the energy, and that's when the nutrition is going to kick in for you. So it's super important to get right, but it's really easy if you put it into the sessions. Put it into the interval session, put it into the long run. And the way I do it is I'll eat the breakfast that I'm gonna, so work back from race day, I'm gonna eat the breakfast that I'm gonna eat before the interval session and before the long run. So my body is not, there's no surprises on race day. There's no, like, can the stomach handle this? It's sloshing around, I need to go to the bathroom, I'm on the start line. There's none of that. You've got to be a professional about this. You've got to be diligent about what your process is going to be on race day and what your plan is and what your strategy is, and then build that into the training process. So before an interval session, 1 hour before an interval session, for me, 5 bananas blended in water in a smoothie. Have that, let that settle into the stomach, and then during the training, just before the training session, a sip of Morton Energy Gel, which is, I use the 320 mix, and that's one of those 500ml bottles is 80 grams. So I know that if I'm taking one of those bottles every hour, then I've got my 80 grams per hour. And I noticed such a big leap if I was taking 80 grams versus taking 37.5 grams. And then before the long run as well, it's equally as important to take the same nutrition as you're going to do in the race in interval session when you're running faster, usually faster than marathon pace or faster than race pace. It's equally important to do that because you want to get the stomach used to running at faster paces and being able to take in those carbohydrates, and you want to, in the long run, be able to take over a long period of time, whether it's 1.5, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours or more. You want to get the body used to, for a long period of time, taking in that, whether it's gels, whether it's sports drink, whether it's a mixture of the two. You want to get the body used to that, and if you can get that together, and it doesn't take long. It's not like training for a faster pace. It's quite easy to get the stomach ready for that. It's just finding out what works for you in terms of gels and sports drink, finding out and planning during the course where you can actually meet people if you need to pick up more gels, if you need to pick up sports drink, how you're going to carry the sports drink. You need to figure out that kind of stuff and then implement it during the race. It's going to be so much easier if you've planned it before. And a little secret tip on the back is, if you're going to if you're training for a 3-hour marathon, if you're training for a 4-hour marathon, doesn't matter that you've done the distance, but if you've been on your feet and running for the long run for that length of time, for 3 or 4 hours, whatever your plan is to do, it's not going to be a surprise on race day for that last half an hour when you're into no man's land, when you're into unknown charted waters, and you've never ran for 4 hours before. It's not going to be a surprise. And then you can race the race instead of just trying to survive to the finish line. That's a huge difference. Try that.